Just say good afternoon, everyone. Most of you know me, but my name is Claire McLean and I'm the Director of Academic Program for Music and Music Therapy here at Western. And I'll begin today by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the lands on which we meet. I'm joining this forum from the southernmost lands of the Darug Nation, and I pay my respects to elders past and present, and I extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples here today. Western Sydney University acknowledges that the teaching and learning undertaken across our campuses continues the teaching and learning that has occurred on these lands for tens of thousands of years. And I'm sure that there will be some great teaching and learning in this session today. I'd like to extend a very warm welcome to our guests and our audience from Western Sydney University and beyond for this forum, which is on a topic that's very important to all of us. Waldo is the academic course advisor and the performance convener for the Bachelor of Music here at Western. He's also an internationally recognised performer and recording artist. And today he'll be joined as moderator for this session by David Cashman, author, performer, arranger, founding member of the Regional Music Research Group, and of course, students here will also be familiar with David as their teacher. For this forum, Waldo has invited 7 high-level industry professionals to join him in this and David in this workshop today. Phillip Mortlock, Creative Director of Origin Music, songwriter Mark Callaghan, screen composer Amara Primero, PR expert Suzi Dhnaram, DJ and producer, artist manager and creative director Anthony Celestino, Carolyn McKnight from APRA Writer Services, and a warm hello to you, Caroline, and Allegra Caldwell, who works with sync and song placement at BMG. So I'll hand over to Waldo and David now.
The way I've always done these in the past is just, I've got a list of questions I can pose to people on their areas of interest. I know we've got one presentation as well here, which we'll put in there, and hopefully we'll get in. All of you, all the presenters, feel free to chip in with your knowledge, because that's what we're here for, to actually gain an understanding of the way the music industry exists in 2021 as we presumably head out of COVID. Just before we start, I'd like to invite each of you just to do a brief introduction of yourself and who you are and what we've come from and so forth. The first person on my list is Phillip Mortlock. Would you just introduce yourself just briefly?
Yes, my name is Phillip Mortlock and I work in the Australian music industry and have done for a very long time. Started in the mid-70s, got a job in a record company as a graphic artist because I just basically wanted to do record covers. That's why I'm here. And then as things happen in this world, one thing led to another and I moved. Sorry?
That was just someone actually with their mute. Can I ask you all to mute yourselves if you're not speaking? Thanks. Sorry, Phil. To encapsulate my career as quickly as I possibly can, I somehow managed to move through a whole lot of different areas of the music business. For the first 17 years working within the Warner Music Company here in Australia, and I did, as I said, I worked in the art department, and then I moved into promotions, and then I moved into marketing. Then they gave me the task of being the creative services manager for the company, which meant that I could move across all of the Australian artists' activities and the international stuff as well. So I had a lot of experience with the Warner labels, Warner Brothers, Elektra, Atlantic and Asylum, and all of the artists that they had. And this is through the 80s when there was a lot happening, particularly with those labels. So it was a great experience. And I finished up with Warner's in the early 90s and then somehow stumbled into the business of music publishing. So partnered up with somebody who was well established in publishing. And I started, after being in the record business for 17 years, I suddenly discovered what publishing was all about. So I've been doing that ever since. And then our business has expanded. That business is called Origin Music Publishing.
We've added on a record label, Origin Recordings. We've added on a theatrical business called Origin Theatrical, which has become our biggest business. So we look after theatrical rights in Australia and New Zealand for very large musical and theatre catalogues such as Rodgers and Hammerstein and Really Useful Group and so forth and so on. So somehow I've managed to move across a whole lot of areas of activity in the music business. I have to admit that I've never had any tertiary education whatsoever. It's all been the school of adversity and hard knocks. This is a passion industry that we work in. So most of us are here because we are passionate about music. And it's interesting how that drives you through the leaner times and the tougher times. And you realize that there's probably better things that you could be doing to make money, to make ends meet. But music keeps pulling us all back into it. And that is with people that work on the business side as much as it is on the music side. So that's me in a nutshell.
Thank you very much. Mark Callaghan from APRA and songwriter, would you tell us a bit about yourself?
So my potted history begins in the very late 70s when I was at university studying architecture. Got into a band with some mates, which was called the Riptides, and we played around Brisbane, put out a single or two, came to Sydney, signed with a record label, put out a mini album and then an album. That band, ran its course, and then I formed a band called Gangajang in the mid 80s, and we had some success commercially with a couple of albums, and I've continued writing and performing music ever since. But in the meantime, in around 98, I got a job in the music publishing industry, and I've spent the last sort of 25 years with a sort of a parallel career in performing music, but also in the music business, particularly in music publishing. Also worked for a while in A&R at Festival Records, where I was the A&R manager there and actually signed Waldo, which is, I think he still regrets. So yes, but through that time, I've had varying experiences, but mostly on the business side in terms of in the area of music publishing. Worked for a while at APRA, and I'm currently on the board of APRA as a writer-director. So that's me in a nutshell. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Amara, tell us about yourself.
Thanks, David, and thanks for having me. Well, I am a screen composer, and I have been doing this full-time for the last 5 years or so. Prior to that, I was a music teacher, so I was teaching in a high school and also performing and working part-time as a composer. But since then, I was able to make the leap into composing full-time, and I do a lot of work across documentaries, true crime shows. That seems to be a big niche of mine that I've fallen into, and unscripted world also, and short films, and everything else in between, when it comes up. But that's sort of the bulk of my work. I've also, in the meantime, in the last 5 years, founded a production music company, which it's a catalog of music basically that we deliver to TV shows, that large scale TV shows that maybe are working with smaller budgets at times. And that comprises of a number of composers that I have on board. So a team of people that work with me. So that's me in a nutshell.
Lovely, thank you. Suzi.
Thanks, David. I'm Suzi Dhnaram. I currently work at Frontier Touring, doing I'm an immigration coordinator, so I assist with the working visas. So as you can imagine, that's kind of at a standstill at the moment. But I started 27 years ago just through a friend who was selling merch for the Angels, and we became good friends fast, and she got me onto the Hunters and Collectors tour, which took me around Australia. And then she moved on to Neil Diamond, and I moved on to the Angels, and it just kind of went on from there. There was a point where nothing was really happening, so I decided to get a working visa and go to London to try to, extend, my resume. And after 8 months working in the aviation industry, I finally got a job with a sound company called Britannia Row Productions, which is a pretty huge sound company, which I did not know at the time. So they do the Brit Awards and Glastonbury. And just through there, I just made great friends and continued on to work for Kylie Minogue through a connection. Then went to New York for a little bit of a holiday, ended up interning for Magus Entertainment, which was Duran Duran's management company, and helped setting up Modular Records Australia over there. And then I came back to Australia, and as you said, David, it's all about the passion. And so I went to a couple of advertising agencies. There was no love from either one of us. So I then just persisted with an employment agency and got various bits and pieces. And then it's funny what you manifest. I was saying to my partner, I'd love to work at Frontier. It'd be great. It's only down the road. And out of the blue, I got an email from my employment agency asking if I could do a part-time reception job, not knowing who the company was. So I went for it. And it was Frontier. So I started as receptionist here, just in the afternoons, and then progressed to immigration coordinator, which is, it's fantastic. It's the best company I've ever worked for. And that's me in a nutshell. But I also did a little PR business on the side, thanks to someone called Kieran Gribben, who he was the last singer with INXS, an Irish singer-songwriter, successful in his own right. And we got chatting, and he encouraged me to, start a PR business. And I started that, and yeah, it's been a little hustle on the side, but it's also been really rewarding. So it's the connections, the lovely people in your life that you find and keep. But as Phillip said, I didn't have any tertiary education. It was all purely for the love of music. And if you're in it for the money, it's not what you want to be in. But if you love the industry, it's something that I'll be in for a very long time.
Lost my mute button there for a minute. Thank you, Suzi. And Celestino, tell us about yourself.
Hi. Okay, I probably sounds like a little bit of a combo of both Suzi and Phillip's experience. I started out actually in advertising in the 1990s and didn't really enjoy doing that, and was very interested in graphic design. And I just wanted to be doing graphic design for music, and specifically with electronic music as the focus, because that's where my interest lay. So I sort of started doing that in the 1990s, as well as DJing, and all these sort of things just sort of ended up being combined. And I was lucky enough to go work for a company that did those things, specifically did like graphic design and marketing for electronic music. And and from there, that evolved, because I was doing DJing, that sort of led into like an A&R role in bookings, in a booking department of a festival and the brand that we had, One Love. So yeah, that kind of just kept rolling, because I'm trying to like think of the easiest way to explain everything. Most people work in music, they work through so many different roles until they kind of land where they land. So it's like, which one do you pick from? But yeah, I mean, essentially, our music company had a JV with Sony. In 2010, we went independent. We had a national festival, which was probably Australia's largest touring music festival after Big Day Out had finished, which was called Stereosonic. that company, that touring company, sold to a US company, which essentially tanked it. We were separate from that after we basically were bought out, and we focused on other things: music, recordings, publishing, management. And in 2021, I guess we're probably one of the only electronic focused labels that has branches in management and publishing and recordings, and does events as well. We do a JV with Live Nation, which we haven't done, a festival called Festival X, which had its first year in 2019, which was very successful, and then wasn't able to run last year, or likely this year also. But yeah, we cover a bunch of things. I manage a bunch of acts over the years. A current act that I manage, Shouse, is doing quite well. Might have heard that song from the radio. Yeah, I mean, yeah, just like anyone, just trying to just keep the lights on, you know, in music seems to be the main goal, I would say. But yeah, and then on the other side of things, just, you know, as a personal outlet, I still make music with friends. I don't really do much DJ. I haven't done any DJing really for 5 years, but I'm kind of aged out of that a little bit. But yeah, still make music, still very interested in it, very passionate on lots of things. And yeah, just active, and probably have been busier since last March than I've ever been before in my life. So, you know, just trying to keep the whole business running as other elements of the business have been put on hiatus. So yeah, I'm Ant Celestino, general manager at One Love Music. I guess is the easiest summary of that.
Thanks for that. One thing I'm noticing, of course, is that all of our speakers have these enormous ranges of, they've done this, they've done that, and which tends to happen in the music industry. You do end up moving around, as you said, Ant. Okay, we'll go on. Allegra Caldwell, tell us about yourself.
Hi, thanks, David. I guess a little differently to everyone else, I kind of am a one-trick pony in the music world. I found out about music supervision when I was about 15 years old, and I was just noticing, I was making a lot of short films with my friends, and the process I was spending more time on was picking the right music for our 6-minute film rather than doing anything else. And so I just kind of looked into if that was a job and found that it was, and started watching a lot of Australian TV and film, and started noticing one person in particular's name pop up in a lot of credits, and I was a big fan of his, a music supervisor called Norman Parkhill. And I essentially stalked him. No, it was a very serendipitous moment. My dad was a yoga teacher and used to own a Bikram yoga studio in Lane Cove. And I was saying to my dad, I've got to meet this guy called Norman. I think he lives in Sydney. And Dad was like, oh, that name sounds really familiar. I looked up in his yoga database, and Norman had started Bikram yoga 2 weeks before we'd had this conversation. So it was this beautiful kind of serendipitous moment. And I think I just picked my final year 12 and year 11 subjects, and got to have a coffee with Norman, and he told me to go do a law degree, and I was like, oh shit, like I was not prepared for that. So I went and did a Bachelor of Creative Arts at Macquarie, and I always tailored and focused my subjects towards music production and film production, and kind of any music licensing and music management that I could. And then I was lucky that by the time I was 21 and in my final year of uni, Norman was impressed that I was still passionate about music supervision, and he gave me an internship. So I worked for his company called In Sync Music, and I think I worked with him for about 4 months, and he decided to move to Byron Bay and left me as the general manager. So I was 21 and signed to music supervise shows all by myself, which was horrifying, but it was great. He threw me in the deep end and I loved it. So I think my first show I did It's called The Gods of Wheat Street, which was an all Indigenous series, and I found all Indigenous music, and that was a lot of fun. And I worked on the last season of Pact of the Rafters, Wonderland, all 3 seasons of Wonderland, and Love Child.
Waldo's meeting. I'm not even, I don't have to.
Oh. I thought somebody was a big fan of Wonderland there for a second. And Love Child, which was set in the 60s. So we did a lot of re-records and covers, and it was great. I think I listened to music from the 60s for about 2 years straight and nothing else, and that was great. And then from there, I got the opportunity to work for Cobalt Music, which was a rights holder, a music publisher, and a record label to a degree as well. And so I went and joined their film and TV team. And so instead of buying the music for the shows, I was then tasked with trying to sell our catalogues to other music supervisors. And then I worked there for about 18 months, and then BMG was starting in Australia. And I got a tap on the shoulder from Heath Johns to come on board. And I worked at BMG for 5 years and co-headed their sync department with another guy called Cameron Elliott. And then I was actually transferred to the LA team just as that was happening. COVID hit. So I worked for BMG LA for the past year and a half, up until a couple of months ago, where I decided I wanted to go back to music supervision. And I've just recently started up my own music supervision company called Good Find. So that's me in a nutshell, but all sync and music supervision the whole time.
Lovely. We've got lots of nutshells here, I notice. And last, and of course not least, Dr. Waldo Garrido. Just give us a short introduction to you.
I'll mute myself. First of all, I'd like to thank all our guests. I'm an academic, music academic at Western Sydney, and I've had a kind of a great relationship with some of you guys, some of the people that I've invited, like Phillip Mortlock. I've known him for many years. He took me for a long ride. Started with Orange and Albert, and then finally ended up with BMG. I think I've been signed to every single publishing company because of Philip. So I'm a bass player. I'm kind of like a jazz kind of musician, and I'm not sure if I am, but I've kind of had relative success. As I said, I've been signed to a few of the record companies, and I think I'd rather talk about what I'm doing at the moment, which I think is more interesting. Finally, because of all the hard work and that I've done over the last few years, I've kind of finally got to a point where I think something concrete, something big might be happening. And is that I'm not talking about whether I'm going to make any money out of this, but it's a fulfilling thing with my career, that I'm able to work with the people that I'm working at the moment with, Alex Acuna from Weather Report and Frank Kambali from Chicoria Band, and lately I'm kind of connected with a producer. Another Chilean. It seems to be like I'm working a lot with the Chilean mafia. And this guy's been very successful in the States. There's this guy called Mauricio Guerrero. He won 6 Grammys, and he worked with Phil Collins. He worked with everyone in the States. He even worked with Chick Corea. And so he really liked the project that I'm doing at the moment. In fact, he said he loved it, and he's decided to ask him if he could mix it, do a final mix. But he decided to actually he asked me if I wouldn't mind if he co-produced the album with me. I said, no way, man. It's my thing. So that's a project, and I'm recording. I'm doing a lot of other things, and also writing a nice little track with Ant Celestino as well. It's a really fun track, and I'm doing a lot of stuff at the moment. It's because of one of the things that is important for me, just keeping my contacts, being honest with my contacts, and being honest with your music as well was really important. I mean, I think one of the things that I've proven in many years is that I can still do my Latin music in Australia. It's difficult, but you know, I've always been honest with the kind of stuff that I do. And Mark Callaghan was very, very kind to me, and he actually signed me, and he probably knew how difficult that was going to be. But you know what? I mean, in the end, it actually did pay off. Because it's allowed me to do all these things, allowed me to write books and articles about my music, my experiences in the music industry as a kind of as the other, you know what I mean, as the other. I don't mean it as a kind of you know, kind of doing world music or ethnic music in a place in Australia, you know, and I think I've kind of I've opened some, you know, roads in there. Anyway, that's enough for me. Have you keep going?
Okay, thank you, Waldo. Now, the way I've just got some questions I'm just going to put to people in the group, and at the same time, any of the presenters, feel free to chip in with your knowledge and your take on various things. So I thought I'd start first of all with Mark. And the question I have here is that the music industry in the last couple of years has been dealing with the impact, of course, of the COVID pandemic. What's the path out?
Very good question. Very good question indeed, David. I think looking at it from a big picture point of view, seeing as how most musicians earn their living, a good part of their living from performing live, I think that we've still got a long way to go. That's my own personal opinion, before touring becomes profitable, certainly for medium to larger size bands. We need venue capacities pretty much to be at 100% before these groups and performers can make any money, because you know, the expenses of touring are such that really it's the last 20% whatever that the performer gets. All the rest goes in expenses. So if you reduce your capacity, you know, the performers' incomes are affected disproportionately. It also affects live crew and all the associated people working in the business. As Suzi would know from, you know, her position where she works at Frontier, you know, this is a very, very challenging time. And I think that the best way that I think writers and musicians can work out of this pandemic, I think, is to use the time to create more works. So I do expect that there's a lot of people who have been doing that, have been working at home, recording remotely with friends, and luckily we have the technology to do that now. So I expect there'll be a slew of releases as we come out of lockdown. But I do think that the key is going to be when venues open to full capacity, and I do think that's potentially a little while away yet. Suzi may have a better view on that. But I think probably best to leave that there. I don't know what other paths there are out for musicians. I mean, in a way, being a musician in the modern world, you have to be very agile. You have to think of ways to reinvent yourself and ways to find in this sort of portfolio career that most musicians have. And in fact, all the presenters here have, you know, alluded to this morning in talking about what they've achieved or what they've done over the years. And I think that, you know, necessity is the mother of invention, as they say. And so musicians will be finding ways to reframe themselves and refocus their energies to find ways to break through the sort of impasse that COVID has produced. I think it's also worth noting for those as a bit of a sobering statistic that currently, according to the latest statistics, anywhere between 65 and 85,000 tracks a day are uploaded to the DSPs around the world. So what you're seeing is an absolute deluge of new music coming out. And I think the biggest challenge for musicians and writers and those working in the creative areas of music is to find ways to lift themselves above the background noise of all the other content that's out there. Back to you, Dave.
Yes. Mara.
Hi, David. Could I jump in after just to continue on with Mark was talking about, which is, you know, fantastic. The end part that Mark spoke about, you know, musicians having to reinvent. I know that, you know, we use this word, you know, so often, and it's starting to maybe lose impact or power, but it is so true. I think is something that I've noticed is a lot of performing artists have reinvented themselves during this time, and they've actually reached out to me as part of the library that I run, and they've shown interest in writing for screen. So that's sort of one example with, or not necessarily even reinvention, but just sort of using your skills in a different, you know, way. And some of these musicians have never written for screen before, but they're phenomenal recording artists and performers. So they are transferable skills, you know, that you can, if you're already a great musician, you can transfer those skills into understanding how to write for screen. You know, that can be taught, that can be trained, you know, and there are little tips, you know, that we can give composers or musicians to become screen composers. So that's something that I've noticed, and I'm sure there are so many other areas, but that musicians or performing artists have reinvented themselves, but that's been a big one over this time. And, you know, it's been great for them, even though the money, maybe the upfront sync fees are not necessarily great, and it doesn't necessarily help them with income in the meantime. It's developing another skill, and the long term, as we all know, the royalties on some of these shows can generate quite a good income later on down the track. That's my 2 cents.
Thanks, Amara. Anyone else like to weigh in on this?
I was just wondering if I could just draw your attention, David, to a question from Vanessa. It's in the chat. Vanessa Fotheringham, who has 2 sons who are involved in music. And then I'd also like to follow up with a question, but it's unrelated to what we're talking about right now, but it's to do with gender, especially in the screen industry.
Sure, absolutely. This becomes a free-for-all, which is awesome. Vanessa, did you have a question you'd like to pose?
I've written it in the chat. I'm not sure if you want me to repeat it or if anybody has managed to read it.
Just summarise.
Just as a summary, both of my sons are into music. I couldn't, as I've said in the chat, I couldn't talk them out of it even if I wanted to. I do have concerns about the music industry. They're both working with Cleopatra Records in the US, and especially my youngest son is working with David Caplice in Australia. I feel concerned. I mean, I love hearing everybody's stories and the journey. It's just not something that I can see them kind of having any sense of surety about. Like, it just seems so unstable to me, even though they're one of the many that get chosen to kind of work with a label. And I'm just wondering, like, is there value in having multiple outlets and connections for my boys, for instance, or are they better to just hone in on what they're doing well and kind of just focus their energy and attention on that?
I can jump in on that one, if you like.
I'm going to write notes so I can pass it on to them.
Don't quote me. Nobody quote me. Look,
just know.
If I was giving advice, you know, to anyone in this, I mean, I guess you could apply to lots of things, but I would always say, because we're talking about these sort of like multiple skills or, you know, these different sort of things, and that can get confusing, right? But I always like to tell people, you know, to just sort of like find the intersection of what you're good at and what you like to do and what you believe you could make some sort of difference in or a change in, or something where you can really add value in your own way, right? And then, so like that's really important to find that intersection of those things, because there's a lot of people that work in what we do that are good at one thing, but they absolutely hate it, you know, or they hate what they're doing. So if you can find the thing that you're good at and that you like doing, and you think you can, what do I say, add value in or make a change in, and then if you put the hard work in and kind of don't doubt what you're doing, and also don't let anyone else doubt what you're doing in that, then, and you're able to sort of like think critically about what you're doing and be objective about what it is that you're doing, you know, and then sort of keep going for those goals that you set out, then I think it's very hard for anyone to stop you or for anything to actually be in your way. I think at the moment, there's this perception that everyone's stopping me from doing things. You know, there's so many gatekeepers. I have to get through this, or, you know, oh, there's like 60,000 tracks uploading a day to Spotify. So it's just this insurmountable thing. But the fact is that things still break through because, you know, great music, like any other thing, will come through. You know, I'm a really strong believer that there's no like Stairway to Heaven on a cassette in somebody's drawer, you know, that hasn't been discovered, right? Like any sort of great thing will work its way through. But it's really important if you're working in whatever sort of sector, if you're an artist, for instance, that you're kind of like trying to find a path that is a path that you can travel on, you know, and that's why I sort of say you won't go wrong if you're finding the things that if you understand what you're good at. So like if you're a songwriter, then stick to being a songwriter, you know, like don't lose sight of that. Often most people I kind of come across through A&R travels, it's completely like confusing, you know, like what people want to be. They want to be an artist, but they want to do this, but then, oh, I'm making lots of money being a songwriter, so I'm going to, you know, I don't want to drop doing this, but I really want to be an artist. It's like at some point you kind of need to choose what that's going to be, you know, like like I said, what are you good at, what you like to do, and what do you think you can add the most value to whatever it is that you're doing. And then, yeah, if you think really objectively, have good, like an inner dialogue, because everyone's going to have like different varying perspectives and degrees of advice on it. So if you can be really objective about what you are doing, then I think that's the most important thing. Because I mean, my experience is that the music industry is so full of delusional people, you know, like doing, whether they're working front of stage or on stage or back of stage, you know, there's so much delusion going on. So I think it's really important to just be honest with yourself about that. And I better be quiet there. I think I'll let someone else jump in.
Sorry, can I just, I really appreciate that.
Sorry, I just need to just say something. We've got a couple of presentations. Can we leave the questions for the end? Allegra has a presentation which I'd love to hear, because this is something that I get a lot of questions from my students. Is the song placement and production music, which I'll get Amara later maybe to give us more information about. Can you do that, Allegra?
Yeah, sure.
It's one of my next question too, but Allegra, please.
Yeah, so I guess just a little overview of what I want to talk about is mostly catering to songwriters and artists wanting to release music. So it's about how to kind of cater your music or write music in a style that, you know, just as Amara was saying, is the keys that kind of can unlock some doors with sync, or, you know, in her example with composition as well. So I'm gonna just try and figure out how to show you my slides. Okay, so sync is when you, oh, sorry, I've just like lost everyone's photos. It's very isolating. Let me just try and, there we go. Now I can see some faces. It feels like I'm in a real room. So very simply, sync is when you put a piece of music with a moving image. And that is, you know, there's so many examples in TV shows, films, documentaries, commercials, promos, games, apps, anything, even when you're filling up petrol at the Bowser and there's a screen, if there's a piece of music that's playing in there with an ad, that's been licensed. So there's music kind of being licensed all around us. And to actually obtain the rights to use the music in a TV show or a film, there are 2 copyrights that need to be cleared and licensed, and that's firstly the master sound recording, which we just kind of refer to as the master, And secondly is the musical work, and we kind of refer to it as the publishing of the track. So you've got your master recording, which refers to the actual recording. And so think of what comes out of the studio desk and what's put onto the CD, like that is the recording. And then you've got the music publishing, which is the underlying composition of the piece. And I like to think of it a little bit more as like the music and lyrics, and I think of it more like the sheet music. So you can have as many different recordings, people can do as many covers of one song as they like, but there's only ever the same one piece of musical work as the underlying composition. So I've done a little mock-up of kind of how this breaks down to, and I've co-written a song with Dua Lipa, which is absolutely not true. And it's called My Coffee Machine is Broken. It's a ballad. It's a very sad, slow, depressing track, which is not in Dua Lipa style. But the song is performed by Allegra. That is my artist name. I'm not really an artist, just to be clear. And then we've got on the publishing side, I wrote 75% of the track, and then Dua Lipa has written 25% of the track. Dua Lipa is signed to Universal Music Publishing. I don't have a publisher, so we call it copyright control, where an artist retains their own publishing. And then the single was released by Good Find Records, which again is not a real company, but just so you understand. And when it comes down to sync, whoops, I just thought I'd explain how fees are kind of broken down in a really simple way. So if a TV show wants to use my song, My Coffee Machine is Broken, and they want to use it for 30 seconds, me as the music supervisor has to negotiate with the record label. I have to negotiate with myself as the songwriter, owning 75% of the publishing. And then I have to also negotiate with Universal Music Publishing for Dua Lipa's 25% of the song. And I have to get all parties to agree to the same fees and terms. And so if I give the record label $1,000 for the use of the recording, I also have to give the publishing $1,000 as well. And then that is broken up between how much of the song was written by who. So an easy example is two songwriters, 75-25, and you can see that the total fee is $2,000. Now, with some artists, and especially genres like hip hop and R&B and some electronic, this can get really complicated because there's multiple songwriters. So I like to use this example because it's just ridiculous. Pitbull and Kesha's track Timber has 14 songwriters on it, and there are 9 different music publishers attached to it and a record label. So as a music supervisor, I have to negotiate with 10 different people or companies to try and get the rights to one song. And if they don't all agree, then I can't use the song. So it can be a real headache to try and license things for a TV show. And so we just love artists that are the songwriter and the artist, obviously, because you can just kind of clear it as simply as can be. Okay, so onto more of the creative aspects of it. When it comes to sync for film, TV, and advertising, most of the time, they haven't really thought about music until the last second. And they're really trying to get your music to help tell their story. And the only times that they really do ever think about music before it's shot is if someone is going to perform a song within the show. So in Love Child, we had to clear a lot of music ahead of time because the actors were going to be performing the songs within the show. So they actually thought about it, whereas half the time I'm now trying to cater exactly to their edits and their cuts and giving music you know, to the producers or the editors that is going to hopefully suit their scenes. So that's what I said. So I just want to give you a couple of tips as to what to think about in the background as you're writing songs, or even what you can do to some songs that you've already written that might help with sync. So I always like to say, you know, write songs that are as dynamic as possible with different sections, builds, drops, and really punctuated endings, because if songs just kind of slowly fade out, it's actually really hard to place it in TV shows. Most scenes you kind of want a dramatic, like a punctuation on a, you know, maybe some kind of reveal on a scene or a montage. So having different sections that editors can pick from within a song, and they often make kind of a whole song, but they'll just chop it up and it'll only go for a minute, you know, instead of a 3.5-minute song. And lyrics. So I just want to say that, you know, with a lot of these tips that I'm giving, it's, you know, if you're trying to put a single out and get it onto Triple J, like I'm definitely not trying to teach you how to write a song for Triple J or, you know, to get on the radio. But, you know, there's some things that you can be conscious of if sync is really important to you. So be conscious of what your message is and avoid being overly specific and mentioning geographical locations and people's names, because again, like, we're trying to support the creative storytelling, and if your song is really specific, it can be really hard for them to kind of fit the narrative that they're wanting to convey in the story. Especially in advertising and sports and promos, people love a call to action lyric. So it's motivational, it's, you know, get up off your chair and you know, take over the world and go march down to the shop and buy a Coca-Cola. You know, you feel empowered and, you know, you're kind of an engaged participant with the commercial. If your lyrics are, you know, I'm really sad, I'm feeling lonely, I've lost the love of my life, you know, there's pretty much zero chance of a brand wanting to get behind a song like that, because, you know, it just doesn't fit with their message. Obviously in film and TV, it's a little bit different. There's more scope for different scenes, but definitely in advertising, it's they definitely love music that makes you feel empowered. And there's also a couple of sync trends that, you know, they pretty much don't change from year to year. There's bold and swaggery, edgy tracks. So these again are the call to action lyrics. Danger, trouble, Kanye West, Black Skinhead gets used every year by some other car company, and they're always looking for that next version of that track. And then you've got the anthemic, what does that say? It's under the bar, sorry. Uplifting cinematic tracks with orchestral strings and again, call to action, but these are your kind of swelling, heartfelt, a lot of themes around home, and often like non-romantic love. That's also a really big thing that comes up a lot, conveying the theme of love without it being really personal, a personal love story, because again, that kind of, it's a bit limiting to its story. And so there are a couple of tracks there that are often referenced. And then the other one is just a really fun, energetic, celebratory music. At the moment, we're getting a lot of briefs for Sophie Tucker, that really cool kind of percussive, a lot of beautiful and more different instrumentation, but, you know, a real groove. Uptown Funk was a big one about a year or two ago now, and that was just kind of referenced all the time. They just really wanted the horns and that kind of vibe to really make you feel good, and again, going out and buy their products. And yeah, a couple of little things. If you've already written songs and you kind of want to make them a little bit more sync friendly, a few tips are just to have your lyrics handy, have your instrumentals handy, and have clean versions. Yeah, any explicits kind of really rules out sync, unless you're in a really cutting edge drama and they don't mind a few cusses here and there, but most of the time if there's an explicit, in the US I wasn't even allowed to pitch some supervisors' music if there was any swearing in it, so clean is always better. And then also just know your splits. So as I was explaining, like with my made up song, 75% is my share, 25% to Dua Lipa, and make sure they're registered with APRA. And that makes it really a lot easier for music supervisors to be able to find you. And then, yeah, also be willing to potentially customize and retweak lyrics and maybe take out things that aren't appropriate. You can always create a sync edit so it has more drops or builds, and also be open to providing stems, and especially in advertising, they'll get the stems and kind of recreate the songs and bring out sections that they want it to pop and to max, sorry, I've forgotten what I was trying to say. But covers are also a really, really great way to kind of get discovered in sync. I was looking on a brief the other day, and I was looking for some alternatives to a Johnny Cash song and just seeing what was out there. And it was a cover that he had done. And so I was looking for what other artists had done covers of this same song. And so covers are a really great way because you're tapping into a recognizable song. You're able to customize the song to better fit the picture. So, you know, you might be briefed on it and say, I want you to create a cover of the song, and then they can really tailor it to what they need. And then it can also be a cost-saving exercise for a TV show, because it may not mean, like, if I want to use a Johnny Cash song, I would just have to clear the publishing and then create my own master, and then I wouldn't have to pay for a Johnny Cash master and the Johnny Cash publishing. So it's a very simplified version of how that all works, but just to give you some ideas. And I just want to show one example of where we actually created a sync edit for a track. So this is when I was at BMG, and we worked with our UK team. We had a song called Good Times, Bad Times by Camo and Crooked, and the NRL were a little worried that a track called Good Times, Bad Times was a bit negative. So we created a new sync edit of it, and essentially we just took out bad times and called it good times, and you'll hear it in the music. And they ended up using it. I think this was from about 2 or 3 years ago. And it was their kind of launch of the next year season of the NRL. So I'll just play that, and really quickly you'll be able to hear where they've done the edit. So it says like, I'll be there for the good times. I'll be there for the good times. That's how creative it was. So have a listen.
So let me get this straight. You're telling me there's 80 minutes in a week just for rugby league? James?
What I'm saying is there are 10,080 minutes in a week, right? You can do what you want with the other 10,000 minutes, but those 80 are special, mate.
He's right, you know.
All the life, I was high for the good times. I was high for the good times. Tell my baby that I'll be better.
Who do you think's doing the heat tonight then?
That should be Tedesco, wouldn't it, up against his old team?
Hey, go Tigers.
That's a nice real life example. And then I just thought I'd mention, because, you know, when I was back at uni and thinking about what I wanted to do, obviously I knew I wanted to be in sync and music supervision, but there are so many other jobs related in the sync world that I just thought I would highlight and cover. So music supervisor, which is obviously what I do, creative sync at a record label or publisher. So again, that's what I used to do when I was at BMG. I was pitching the repertoire and trying to find homes for all the music to be used. And then there's also the licensing team at the record label and publishers. So they're the ones that are involved with negotiating the contracts and the deals and creating the sync licenses and invoicing and that kind of thing. There are sync agents who are independent to record labels or publishers, and they will tend to represent independent artists and just help them find sync opportunities. And then there are also music licensing and creatives within TV networks and studios and streaming platforms. So, you know, there's someone at Channel 7 that clears all of their promos, or Channel 9, or there's big music teams at Netflix now. I think there's 25 or 30 in the LA office now. That's such a big department that there wasn't a few years ago. TV producers and promo producers and advertising and creatives, they're all kind of obviously looking for music and in their own projects. So there's lots of different kind of uses and careers. And then I just put together a few really helpful resources. So if you want to kind of keep up to date with what's happening in the Australian film industry, Inside Film is a great resource. They've got a great newsletter. And then Hollywood Reporter and Variety for overseas. There's a company called Think Tank that also do mailers. APRA AMCOS have great links and articles. And then in the US, the Guild of Music Supervisors, and their YouTube channel is really great, and they have a lot of panels. So if you want to listen back to other panels, I find out who music supervisors are on IMDb. And then go and follow a lot of music supervisors on social media, because they often post about the projects and if they're looking for things, and they do some Q&As. And that is it. That was hopefully not too long. I'm sorry, I hope you're all still there. I will try to figure out how to stop sharing.
I believe you've stopped, Allegra, so that's fine. That's good.
Okay.
Moving on, Phillip Mortlock. It's a question for you that everyone else can put into as well. For 20 years before the pandemic, it seemed that live music was in the ascendancy and recorded music was declining in importance as an income source for working musicians. But over the past couple of years, that's changed, and we've seen musicians recording and releasing more music, whether it's through record labels or through YouTube or whatever. Whereas their live performances, which are often streamed on social media, hasn't brought them in as much money. As we open up, what's going to happen next, do you think? Do you think recording will return? Do you think live music will resume its ascendancy, or what?
There are so many ways to answer this. I'll try and keep it on track with what we're talking about here. I mean, following a very instructive overview of sync activity that Allegra's just done, probably indicates very much so what other streams of income can be generated out of music in a general sense. And the interesting thing is that the perspective that people have on how the industry has changed can be seen from so many different perspectives. But the fact is that the record business is doing better business than it's ever done before. Record companies that own major catalogs, especially the major record companies that have huge back catalogs of repertoire that are now available across all of the streaming services, are doing just fine. And they've no longer got the costs of manufacturing and warehousing and shipping and getting back returns and all the other headaches that record companies had to deal with in the physical world. None of those exist in the digital world, and so it's meant that there's more, there's less costs, and there's more opportunity for profits out of catalog. That's easy enough to apportion that to existing well-known catalog of music. New music creators are having a terrible time making money out of their music because they don't have the same level of activity with their music. They're still trying to get a foothold. I mean, the fundamental problem that we have in this day and age is that there are no filters. So what Mark was referring to, the 70-odd thousand tracks that go up on Spotify and iTunes and so forth on a daily basis, that's an ocean of music, and your song that you've just put up this week is a cork bobbing in that ocean. And how the hell do you get that music noticed? Well, you know, there's still unfortunately a lot of luck involved in this business, but I certainly think that if you, as a creator, can be your own filter and actually set yourself as high a benchmark of what kind of music you're creating as high as you can. So in other words, don't just throw something out there and hope that it might stick. Actually work hard to make it as good as you possibly can. And it's all subjective. You know, one thing that you can consider to be your greatest work can be viewed by somebody or heard by somebody else and not even raise any attention whatsoever. But you know, through the process of you creating music and then try to connect with people that might like what you're doing, you know, it's trial and error. And certainly performing as a live musician, whether it's in live venues or online, is a way of connecting with an audience. But we haven't had that really at all for the last year or more. And it's hard to know when that's going to come back. So it's been very interesting to see how resourceful a lot of musicians have been around the world in trying to stay connected to their audiences, or in fact, trying to start the process of connecting with an audience. Some have been more successful than others. It's really, it's about, as I reiterate, it's about setting your own filters and making sure that what you're putting out there is as good as you can make it. The better it is, the more chance it's got. So I don't know whether that answers it, but you know, as I say, this is a question that could be answered in lots of different ways. But certainly, I think that's a key to really getting on in whatever state the business is in, is making sure that what you're putting out or what you're creating is as good as you can make it.
So can I ask you a question, Philip? A lot of my students recognize Gautier, and they've asked me, because I let them know that you had some that you have his publishing, right? I was just wondering, because it's very interesting how he works. Could you just kind of talk a little bit about his work and your work with him?
Look, I count myself extremely lucky to know Wally and to have worked with him, because you know, he's one of the most gifted artists that I've worked with. He's a very creative person. He lives and breathes it. It's fascinating to see the kind of things that he does and that he has done. And you know, when I first met him, you know, he was in a band called The Basics. He was the drummer in the band, the singing drummer, and they were doing one thing. And then at the same time, he was sort of tinkering away literally in his bedroom with this sort of solo project that sampled things and created his own little world. And that's what Gautier became. And neither really had much. I mean, you know, he'd been doing it for a number of years, and he wasn't getting much attention from either the music that he was doing as part of the band or the music that he was doing as Gautier. He was getting a little bit of interest in the Gautier stuff, thankfully, via Triple J, which absolutely was the key that opened the door to access to what Wally was doing, because there was no live component to the Gautier project, and yet he was out on the road, you know, schlepping up and down the coast with the other guys, playing small gigs with the Basics at the same time, and making no money and making no headway. So, you know, it was really interesting to sort of see how it all sort of developed and how it exploded. And so I guess this is where we introduce to the topic of today, and that is the power of a song. And, you know, it's such a cliche to use that, but it's so true. It's just like one song can change everything. And in Wally's case, there were a couple of songs that did that, but most importantly, somebody that I used to know was a song that opened his world up. It was so huge, it was just hard to comprehend. And it's interesting, yes, we represent his publishing, and so therefore with that song, I mean, we represent it here in Australia. Actually, Cobalt looks after it elsewhere, but you know, it's interesting to observe that that he's the kind of artist that's created a song that's had worldwide success that's unprecedented to a certain extent, and then he's chosen not to allow that song to be used in a multitude of opportunities that he could have made a lot of money out of. But he quite rightly has chosen not to allow that song to be used in a lot of different contexts. So in most cases, we second guess what his attitude is going to be to somebody wanting to use that song in an ad or in a film or a TV show or whatever. In most cases, it's a no. And yet a student filmmaker in Western Australia will want to use a bit of that song in the student film that they're making, and they have no money, and he says yes, because that's his choice. It's a creative choice, and you respect that, and it's fascinating to see that as a juxtaposition to, you know, the whole idea of, you know, how to get your music exposed, putting it in film and TV and advertising and so forth. And then, you know, then somebody to take that position because he can. But I certainly think, you know, it encapsulates what choices an artist has. And also the other important thing here is that Wally has pretty much hung on to the ownership of everything that he does. And I think that's a really important thing about what artists and composers can choose to do these days. You don't have to sign. In fact, you should be extremely cautious about signing your rights to anyone or any organization until you really know whether they're a partner that you want to have, because you might end up having a partnership that you don't realize at the time that you're committing to, that goes on way beyond the length of the relationship. So you've got to be really careful who you partner with. The fact is that if you want, you can choose a path in this business now where you can own and manage everything that you do. So you don't necessarily have to have a manager or a publisher or an agent or a record label. You can do everything yourself. But I think that was good advice that Ant gave before about, you know, staying focused on the thing that you're good at and not trying to be everything. So, you know, to counter what I'm saying, it's probably good to find partners or people that will work with you, but be as careful as you possibly can about who you choose and what the offers are, because you can get yourself into some very sticky situations if you're not careful. And as I say, Wally is a good example of somebody who's managed that extremely well. He's been very cautious about his partnerships that he's picked over the years, and he's managed to hold on to a complete control over his creative output. And you've got to respect that. That's a key, I think, to how to survive in the music business these days, is to stay in control as much as you can.
Thanks, Phillip.
Thank you.
Some really good stuff there. Amara and Allegra. Screen composition has traditionally been something that's been done by, by someone who composes and then send off to orchestrators and recording engineers and orchestras and yada yada yada. But how is screen composition doing these days? Are filmmakers and television producers increasingly opting for library music and so forth? And is that a good or a bad thing, do you think?
I can start on that question. So I think for TV and film, I would say, you know, most things that you see on TV will have a screen composer that will create, you know, they'll create the sound of the tone of the show that kind of carries it on. The stuff that I tend to look after is more the commercially released bits of music that fit in between. And then we often use production music again as another layer. So I think all three work really well together. You know, in my experience, the times that we use production music mostly in dramas when, you know, you're at a cafe and you're wanting music to kind of create the sense that it's a live and bustling cafe and what the cafe would be playing over the radio. Whereas in a lot of unscripted, I think production music is used a lot more as the score. I might let Amara jump in a bit more here because it's her world.
Thanks, Allegra. Yeah, for sure. Like, I think that production music, I'll start off with saying that production music is awesome, because essentially production music is, it's artists, it's musicians that, you know their stuff. It's people like, you guys out there that are professionals, or, soon to be working professionals that are writing music. And like Allegra so wonderfully said in that presentation before, she talked about when writing for, with sync in mind, you've got to keep a few factors, with lyrics and drops and edit points, those sort of things. The other thing is with production music, which is intended for underscore, serving the purpose of, I suppose, a lower budget way for, if a production, say, doesn't have a budget to commission a composer to do all of the work, they'll go to production libraries and they'll search for music that has those sort of those aspects within the cue. So the edit points, the stems, the submixes, various things that maybe are going to work as underscore and not necessarily something virtuosic. The idea of underscore is never to sort of take over the, take over the dialogue and everything. It's about underscoring. It's under supporting. You're the support act. You're supporting the story that's going. So I think that production music, and the reason I say it's awesome is because there used to be some sort of stigma, and it's carried through a little bit. Oh, we can only use production music. Oh, we can only use production music's awesome because it's, as I said, it's you guys, it's professionals that have learned how to write for screen, but without having necessarily seen the image. So they're sort of thinking, well, if I'm writing this cue, how could I write this in such a way that it will be syncable, that it will be able to be put to this, a drama scene or a crime scene or something. You're writing with intention all the time. So the same way, like Allegra said, you're writing songs with intention, you're writing underscore with intention too. So I think the production libraries are very much alive. Yes, they are catered towards productions, TV productions, or just projects in general that don't have as big a budget to get that catered, composer feel, but they certainly do serve their purpose. So if it's something that I could, suggest and encourage that, musicians do, is contact production music libraries, see what they need, see if they're taking any new composers. Some of them work in different ways. Some will want the rights exclusively. They might pay you up front for that. And, therefore you maintain, like Allegra was talking about with the master and the publishing and all that sort of stuff. They'll discuss all of the business side of things. But, regardless of that, getting your music out there, I think is the most important thing. So research production libraries. There are so many of them. There's, BMG, Warner Production Music. There's my production music library, which is smaller, but we do have, we're in the process of getting API and growing that, on a platform. But as it stands, we have a lot of composers that are working for us and getting sync placements. They're getting their production music, their underscore in TV shows. And I think that's the most important thing, is you want those placements, and songs as well. We write a lot of songs for shows as well with that. And so great that Allegra has covered all that, because they are, that's all you need, right? With, those, what she was saying, don't get too, you beautifully articulated it, but, don't be too specific, with names and geographical things. If I can give you an example, I did have some examples to share before, but I'm conscious of time now. So there was a show that we wrote some music for called Making the Cut. It is a fashion show, unscripted TV show with Heidi Klum. Anyway, it's competition stuff. So we used some music existing from our library, but then we also got to work, and about 4 of us started writing songs, and we thought, well, what is this show about? It's about competition. It's about, winning. It's about, it's that call to action that Allegra was talking about. Anyway, one of the final song, they used a song that we'd actually written before the show. So prior to it, wasn't for the intention of the show, but we threw it into the mix and they used it as the final song, and it's called Stronger. And it was, the perfect kind of, the winner. She felt empowered, she felt strong, it was emotional. They had the stems to work with. So again, they were able to pull out lyrics where they didn't want the lyrics and just let the instrumental part of the cue work. And then, bring in the lyrics where they wanted it. So it gave them that flexibility. And, it's an area that I really, really encourage musicians and composers, first-time composers, not even first time, just musicians, just write for libraries, as well as, searching for other opportunities too.
Thank you for that, Amara. I just lost my mute key again. If anyone else has anything to add to this, please do feel free to jump in. Suzi, you do a lot of work with touring and bringing people in. And it's been very hard for touring to happen for the last couple of years, both domestically and internationally. I know in Western Australia, there's been a big move for Western Australian musicians just to tour Western Australia and go around and do stuff in regional areas, which is fantastic, but we don't get to see them, of course. What happens next as we start to open up again, and we what will international touring look like in 2022?
We're hopeful. We're hopeful, and I guess that's all we can do, because as you know, it's one day to the next. The rules are changing, and but we live in hope, and we hope that we'll release tours, and we've got some some good acts coming out next year. But you have to just keep that. Have to keep running on the ground with it, because when it does open, it's going to be, people are dying to see live music. People are dying to go to restaurants. It's just one of those. We're just waiting to get out. So we're like a caged animal at the moment. So I think in that aspect, it'll be great, but it's basically, a waiting game. And so, we like I said, we've got it all, the ducks all lined up, ready to go. It just depends on, the borders. We're kind of in our own states at the moment, and also getting them out, and the quarantine period, that all changes. So with Frontier, all I can say is that we're just being hopeful, but we're being really positive about it, because we've got, as I said, we've got some great lineups coming. So, in that aspect, it's great. But, just in general, with my job and doing the immigration, that's just not happening at the moment. But, I always make sure that I'm busy doing other things within the industry, and, and I do take a leaf out of, in particular, one friend. She's in Canada. She used to sing with David Bowie. She was his backing vocalist in 1999 to 2000. And she, she relied on touring. This is in Canada. And now she's actually written a book. She's doing coaching lessons, and you just sort of think, like, singing vocal lessons, and you think, she's actually an inspiration to me, because regardless of the touring aspect and what's not happening, you really need to keep yourself busy to make sure that you don't fall into any kind of rabbit hole, But yeah, I mean, as far as the whole touring thing goes, it's a day-by-day thing, but we are prepared. We're prepared to go as soon as they say, right, we're open. But you know, with WA and Queensland, and you know, as you know, with international touring, we go around the country. We don't. So it's just one of those things we have to wait and see.
Awesome, thanks for that.
Sorry, Amara, sorry, you were going to show a little video. It's just, sorry, David. Can you show it to us now? Because we've got a minute. We'd like to see what what your work looks like.
Yes, no, thanks, Waldo. Look, I was very conscious of time, and look, I'll just show the clip that I was referring to before about that song from the TV show. Let me share the screen now.
The whole thing is overwhelming, and then now it's over, and it's a lot to like think about.
All the madness in the world got me thinking about our future.
I came into this competition to like break out of this bridal box, bridal-wise, personality-wise. But through this competition, I was able to be open, and it ended up being really, really fruitful.
We are stronger than we can know.
Making the cut has shown me that I am a fierce fighter.
We are stronger than we know.
This experience has been amazing. You literally feel yourself changing assignment after assignment.
So strong that we can't stop. So strong that we won't stop.
It's molding you into the person that you're supposed to be, the designer that you're supposed to be, and the business person that you're supposed to be. Thank you. When you get to the end of it, you realize that you're just not the same. I get to build my brand way bigger than it's been. I get to take all the lessons I've learned here and apply them immediately. I feel so proud. I learned that I am most certainly not stuck in a box. There's no ceiling here. Like, I can do absolutely anything I want.
I'm not sure if you were able to hear that, well with the Zoom thing, but just to very quickly just sort of emphasize again that there were a lot more lyrics within that, especially over the piano parts. And obviously that would have, interfered with dialogue or just the moment, the reflective moment of her win and everything. So they were able to, pull out lyrics and use it and work it.
That's awesome. Sorry, can I just go? I just want to that's a really kind of sometimes it's very difficult to do that, because I've tried. Some of the things that I've done in terms of sync have been songs that I've already had. With Allegra, for example, she opened up a whole kind of new market for me with Neighbors. And with Stan as well. The guys at BMG. But there were songs that I've already written. I think I would find it very difficult. I think it takes a very special talent to actually be able to write those kind of things as well. I think Mark Callaghan talked as well about the use of his song, not On Lang Syne. What's the other one? Sounds of Then, which has been very, I've heard it in so many kind of different formats,
Waldo, really quickly, just you said, I think it takes a special kind of talent. No, I think sometimes look, I don't know if we should feel proud of this or embarrassed by this, but in that same show, we thought, oh, look, they're going to be working a lot, so we'll just write a song about, work. And literally, one of the guys that I work with songwriting, he said, okay, I've got the perfect lyrics. He put them down, and he had his partner record them. She's a phenomenal singer. And the lyrics were just work, 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 work. And that was kind of repeated every so many beats, every so many measures or something. And it got placed. you know, like maybe it's that we're simpletons. I don't know. Certainly not Tom.
I don't think so. Yeah, look, I mean, I've got a friend in Mario Grigorov. He's a composer, and he's a phenomenal musician. When you talk about virtuosity before, I mean, this guy is probably one of the best. I mean, he's worked with everyone in the States, you know, with Dave Grusin, you know, toured with Madonna, Wynton Marsalis. And sometimes he finds it very difficult to kind of, you know, to kind of dumb it down if you want. You know what I mean? But he's kind of learned that. He said, look, you know, I mean, because I've done that, being able to readjust, kind of rethink all these things. I'm now doing films with Robert De Niro and all these other people, you know. But yeah, it took him a while because, I mean, I had some. Anyway, so I just asked, thanks, Amara. I just asked Mark Callaghan about his song, Dance with Them.
What would you like to know, Waldo?
Everything about Sunset. Yeah, where's my cat? I'm promoting it to my students.
It's an interesting thing, Sync, because everything that Allegra and Amara have said is completely spot on, and that's great presentation, Allegra, too. But, you know, Sounds of Then is a song that broke all those rules. It's got lots of specific stuff in it, very specific references. But somehow that tune is connected. You know, it was written in the very early 80s, recorded by Gangajang. And, you know, when it came out, it wasn't a hit. But every year it's just gone further and further into the sort of the mainstream and into people's consciousness. And so it's become a bit of an evergreen for me, which is just wonderful. The performing royalties on it have gone up every year pretty much since I wrote it. And it's been placed in various movies and, you know, international movies and advertising throughout the years. And I think it's because it's just an emotional song that connects with people. So, you know, I've written hundreds and hundreds of songs, and each one has a life of its own when it leaves, you know, your little studio or the recording studio that you're in and goes out. As Phillip was alluding to with Gautier, you know, with Wally, those songs just connect with people. And the best thing that I think that musicians can do is to continue to improve their songwriting skills. I take the point that Ant made before and that Phillip echoed as well about finding what you're good at and focusing on that, but which I agree with. But at the same time, a piece of advice I would give, especially to the lady, I'm sorry, I've forgotten your name, who asked the questions about her two boys before. I would say that one thing, that is a constant, is that, you know, you can improve your skills in all areas of life. And one of the things that musicians can do, I do believe, is to create a long-term career and, you know, royalty flow is to improve their songwriting skills and to focus on that as something that will always, you know, bear fruit. And so, you know, especially when you're in relationships with record companies or various partners, as Phil was describing, where, you know, you may or may not have a beneficial long-term relationship with them. You know, through your songwriting, you should be able to create, you know, revenues that whether they're big or small should find their way home to you over time. So yeah, there's not much else I can say about that song. It's got about Sounds, and it's got a fascinating history actually in terms of how close I came a number of times to sort of losing that song. I'm lucky that I made some smart decisions, but also was lucky in various instances where I'm like Wally. There's only, in all my, you know, many years of being in the business, there's only one album of mine that I don't own. So, you know, I think that's Philip's words are very wise there. Just, you know, having partners to work with is really good, but be very conscious about who you decide to work with.
Thanks, Mark. I have a question for Ant Celestino. It's to do with your, you know, that song that you have out, Love Tonight. I believe that it's just doing incredibly well. What was the process with that? And how do you think the whole kind of, you know, the business of doing dance music at the moment, how is that kind of I mean, I know we had this conversation the other day, and you said to me that you were interested in other things as well, not just
Yeah.
music. That's right.
Well, okay. Well, I mean that this project's still ongoing. It's a really good. I guess it sort of glues a lot of different things that Phillip was talking about, things that Mark, Allegra, Amara, like things that everyone's been talking, even Suzi has been talking about as well, the touring. I mean, that song, so this song we released, okay, I first heard this song in 2016. I actually have a video of it the first time I saw it. And I was there to see another act, and this act was supporting that act. And I was there early because I always like to see the support acts. And I saw their set, and then I saw them before this song, and I said to like my assistant at the time that I dragged out to the gig with me, I was like, this is unbelievable. And so I was just like filming it, so I could sort of like have a capture of it. And I just thought that I was seeing something that it just was blowing me away. So, after that, I sort of hooked up with the act, and it actually took a year later for them to record it, how they wanted to record it. And we released it, I guess it was like a year and a half later. So it was we released it at the end of 2017. And I don't know how familiar everyone is with the song, but you can all check it out after this. But, this song was really different to anything I had worked on, to anything that was sort of out there in dance music at the time. It was just really long song.
Sorry, what's the track? What's the track, mate?
It's called Love Tonight by Shouse.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Maybe you could play a little bit if you wanted to. You could play.
Yeah, I can. You know what? I'll let everyone else figure that out. Look, essentially, we put this song out, and we thought, how are we going to market this? And I'm a very small team. It's like me and a couple of other guys. And once we put it out, we thought, well, look, how are we going to position this? So I went out and found some sort of like, I thought this is so out there on the front edges of like what's happening. I need a champion to like really get behind this. So we put together some remixes that could position it to like DJs or someone that would really grab this song and take it into, find a champion for it. And there was one guy, like a DJ called Solomon, who started playing it through like Eastern Europe in 2018. He started playing an edit of one of the mixes, and that was great. So we thought, okay, this is really good. Like, we got this off the ground. And then we found that like the next year, for some reason, it started it jumped over to like this kind of like Burning Man world in America. And from there, I thought, like we've really got something here. So I sort of was doing a lot of traveling around for work, and I went and visited like a bunch of majors, big indies, small indies, just like looking for partners to work this record overseas. And pretty much, I took this record everywhere you could imagine, publicists, like whoever it was, and everyone I played it to, they would just look at me like I took a shit on the desk. Like, absolutely, like, too long, what is this, don't like it, Yak doesn't have social media, it's like, just every single different thing you could think of to like, poo-poo this whole thing. And I kept saying, yeah, but listen to that hook. Like you could remix this 1,000 different ways, like it's just such a good hook. And no one kind of saw it. So I was like, all right, cool, I'm not afraid to sort of like roll our sleeves up and do the work. So this sort of kept going over and over and over for the next year or two. And what happened from there was eventually like, COVID hit. And I was looking through my catalog of like, what can we do like to come up with something specifically for like this moment? How do we feel like something to be part of this conversation at this moment? So I went through my catalog, was looking at songs like, what's like a positive message song that could be like, a lockdown anthem. And I had like a few on the short list, And I always kept coming back to this song. So I thought, oh, okay, this is interesting. We'll put a bit more work into this. So I started trying to like piece together some more remixes, and maybe we'll do a DJ service again and do all these other things. Anyway, it started to connect from what we were doing in, it started to connect in like all of these weird places, like beach towns in Europe. So what was happening was people were so locked down and like going through this crazy moment that people just wanted to escape their COVID blues. So that like in Europe, so as soon as like last summer, there was this kind of reprieve in COVID. So people were just heading to like beaches. And so then you had all these DJs that were like escaped from wherever they were, that were taking this song from this underground song and were taking it to these places. And it sort of just started to work. So we thought, all right, there's something here that we can really keep building on. So the whole thing was like, how do we keep building on this? So we said, well, let's just keep going and let's go and make some more remixes and see if we can get this to like be part of this conversation. Now, when we started to see people getting vaccinated, like in January, we thought, okay, this summer in Europe, this is like the one. We saw that it worked a little bit in the last summer, you're right? So we're really going to make like a big effort. So I put together some new mixes and just absolutely threw the sync of it in promo. Anything we could do to promote the song, we just sort of did it. Now I'm just like one person. Like my team is literally like me and you know, an assistant. So at this point, it was like, okay, great. It's starting to catch on. In the culture, it had really caught on. So like in the dance culture, like DJs everywhere started to play this, whether they were big DJs or really underground DJs that were playing the song. So we just kind of kept putting effort into it and kept like, oh, as soon as one DJ service would finish, we'd put on another one. As soon as one thing would stop somewhere, we'd try something else. And the whole idea was just to keep adding to this snowball effect. Now, at this point, we had like in April, we probably had like 1 million Shazams on the song and like 0 playlists on this song, like from editorial in any DSP. Like it was incredible. And I was this guy that kept going back for years saying, listen to this song, like check this song out. People were like, it's all about new song. Like, because you got to understand the DSPs is just like, it's a pipeline. You're just cramming new music through the pipeline constantly. Like it's all just, you know, well, at this point, like majors were like coming at us pretty fiercely. Like everyone that had told me kind of like to fuck off had come back and, you know, how do we get in? We love this. How do we get involved? Like this is so incredible. And I always sort of thought, well, like there's a real A&R opportunity here, you know, with this act. These guys are incredible songwriters. They've done something really different. And no one kind of saw that. It was just very kind of like cookie cutter. How do we get this? And how do we slot it into our mechanism? And how do we like keep pushing that? And I always thought the best way to negotiate like a deal is to just do the work yourself. So we just said to ourselves, well, we're just going to keep doing the work until the deals look right, because pretty much the idea is that the majors will, like if something's working, they just want it. They just get it and they just plug it in and they've got it. And if another major wants it, they want it even more, you know? So it's because everyone in those companies, for the most part, really isn't interested in music. They're just doing a job. And the job is there's something there, get it, because the competitor will get it. And it's real bean counter stuff for the most part, which I don't really love. Not that I'm like a fiercely independent person, but I just don't like the way that majors do business, or I guess the way large indies do business either. So, which is exactly the same as majors essentially. So, okay, we've developed this song, we've developed this thing, and it's really going crazy. And I've had to sort of go around and create ourselves into our own major just to do this project. So I've gone from like being a guy working on this song for 4 years by himself to hiring like 120 people, you know, in different territories to go and work on this and coordinate all of that. And I think the thing was, it's just like, keep going, just keep going. What can you do? What's more that we can do to keep this thing going? And every time, you know, we would have like people like from the majors in Germany, like there's no way you can do this record in Germany without a partner, you know, like if you don't know the territory, so you can't do it. It's like, okay, well, we'll see what we can do. We'll figure out how to do it. Or, you know, I literally had like people call me and would like, you know, great job, we'll take it from here. You know, but no one really sort of like had belief in the song themselves. No one had belief in the act. And I think at this point, I realized that we just need to do this ourselves, you know, and that's why we sort of like put the work in to take it as far as we could take it. You know, like I couldn't get this song on Triple J. Do you know what I mean? Like it was just bizarre. So, you know, a big part of it, and it's still going, it's still quite a big roller coaster thing, is just putting the work in and recognizing what you have and trying to find an angle that, you know, can really kick it off. You know, like at one point, like David Guetta, I saw like he had a bootleg of it, like that he had made. So I hit him up and was like, this is great. And he was like, yeah, I love this. And he said, speak to my label guys. And I spoke to label guys and they were like, yeah, cool. Like, we'll put it out. And I was like, no, you won't. Like, we'll put it out. Right. And they're like, well, no, like, because we put David's music out. Like, you're this tiny little indie label. What are you going to do? I was like, well, we're just going to do it. And if you want to be part of it, that's fantastic. If you don't, that's completely fine. But we'll give it our best shot that we can do. And so we put like the David Guetta remix out, and that sort of kicked it up another level. So there's all these like little things that keep kicking it up another level, you know? And so then, you know, we went back to the stores and we said, look, there's, you know, this song's like top 10 in Shazam globally, you know, and like no one's giving it the light of day. And the stores locally said, yeah, you're right. Like I basically said to them, this is a massive opportunity for an unbroken act in a year where there's like no acts breaking out. And it's an Australian act. And if you look in Shazam right now, it's like Tones and I and Kid Laroi and, you know, Vance Joy, you know, is like the only acts that you can see in the top 100 in and Masked Wolf is like the only acts that you could see in the top 100 on Shazam worldwide. Like this is a great story for Australian breakthrough music. And they said, yeah, you're right. And so then they took it to the international team and it just sort of started. It's like, what can you do? You know, I had to do the same thing with like so many different elements to get people to support the song, because people just generally, it's just very low risk with what most people are doing. What most people are doing is like very low risk. Everyone just sort of like worries about their not tipping the apple cart too much. And for something where you've got like an unproven act, to have something come out, it's basically, it's not from TikTok, it's not from radio, it's not from Spotify. It's like, what is this from? It's literally from just DJs playing it and loving the song and people hearing it and Shazamming it and taking it home and playing it with their friends at their own parties. That's like true virality happening over like the span of 4 years. Like it's unprecedented. So it's like, that's a very hard model for people that just like, oh, the computer's telling me that this is going off. So I need to like sign this because the data is there. And I would literally have people from like Sony or whatever call me and say, you know, our data analysis have told us that if you don't sign it with us, this song will be done within 2 weeks. It'll plateau and it'll be like on its way down. And we're like, yeah, okay, cool. Well, we're going to just keep doing what we're doing. And because we're not relying on that sort of data, you know, to make this go through. This is a genuine cultural moment that's happening with this song. So yeah, I mean, it's still going. Like it's currently like number 22 in the UK singles chart without like BBC radio or anything like that. So I mean, like we're trying to do as best we can. I mean, it's a breakthrough song, and it's still going. You know, now we're doing like top 40 radio in the US, which like is pretty insane to do without a major. You know, it's an evolving thing. I mean, we sent the guys over because you couldn't, as Suzi said, you can't do touring here. So we just sent the guys over to Europe to do a promo tour there. You know, they just played at like Fashion Week in Paris 2 nights ago. Like it's you just do what you got to do, you know. And I think kind of you know, as Mark having had a hit, you know, like you just want to keep seeing what other areas you can explore with that, you know. And as Phillip said as well, like you know, with Wally and stuff, it's all decisions, as he said, you know, like the decisions you make about what you do with your music is going to impact the song now or the act now and future. We knew that if we signed the record with a major, that was the end of that act, because that's how you go instantly to like one-hit wonder world, because the more money they pay for it, the more they're going to just rinse it to get that money back. So that's why, like, next second, you're going to see like 500 remixes. You're going to see like, you know, a Pitbull version and all the rest of that, which like Pitbull sent me a version, you know, and was like, we want to release this. I was like, no way, because we can't do that now and continue to have an act. So, you know, you kind of got to look at weigh all these things up. Sometimes what's right for the song, sometimes what's right for the act, or you know, for the artist. And, you know, it's a balancing act of all of those things. We knew that if we signed the song, that was the end of it. Didn't matter how much money we made right there. That was like the end of the song. That was the end of the artist, you know, project.
Just before we wrap up, so questionees, if you can keep it short, that would be great. Is there anyone on the floor that would like to ask a question of our Brains Trust here?
Yeah, I was just trying to see if I could unmute. My question was more about the touring. So like I actually work for one of the largest venues in Sydney, which is part of a 300 international group or part of ASM Global. And so what I'm seeing is happening in the States is that they're regulating, I suppose, attendance, artists, crew, all that sort of stuff based on vaccine mandates. Do you think that's coming to Australia? Do you think it will play into our capacity to get back on our feet as an industry? And where and how do you think that will impact us, I suppose? I think Suzi might have been the one who was talking when I had first jumped in, but I'm not sure if anyone else has their thoughts on it.
Yeah, I think, as I said before, it's a day-to-day thing. You know, I think at the moment it's 75% for theatres, and I think it's 75% for venues. But again, you know, it all depends on that press conference every morning, how we're going with the how many cases we're getting every day. You know, controversially, personally, I would like everyone to be vaccinated so we can all get back there and get to the 100% again. But yeah, again, that's a guessing game. It is something that I can't perceive to you know, I just can't tell you right now. I don't know. It's very hopeful that it'll be 75% capacity. And if we can do that, you know, I don't know, you know, in the middle of the whole pandemic, when things were open, we were doing, well, everyone was doing pretty much 2 shows a day, you know, an early show at 6 o'clock, another one at 8, just to get sort of, you know, to ensure that it was worth doing the show. But yeah, it's just, hopefully we won't have to go back there again. We may have to do it to start with, but I don't think, personally, I don't think we're going to see 100% for at least another 12 months. But I do think we'll see about 75%. Whether, you know, there are already places saying fully vaccinated only, and I've noticed that in New York, friends of mine are playing there, and, you know, they're putting up the signs, fully vaccinated only. So whether we go there or not, it's anybody's guess. But as I said, personally, I'd love it to be, you know, a 100% vaccinated venue. You know, it's pretty much the only way we're going to move forward.
And
but that's just me.
Do you then think there's space for, say, the hybrid activities or hybrid festivals? Like I had a teleconference with a mob out of Brazil yesterday, and they were talking about like AR festivals and capacity to have sponsors rooms and multiple stages. And I think like the Black Eyed Peas probably recently did something like that, and a few other artists. Do you think in the Australian demographic or market, is that something we're interested in? And will the numbers make sense, or is it still better to have in-person physical events?
Yeah, I'm not at liberty to say. I don't know. I don't know. It's like I said, here is a lot different to Australia's rules are a lot different to those abroad. So I can't guess anything. I don't want to do that. Like I said, it could be a 75% thing that we do. We will hopefully, you know, in the next where are we, October, in the next 3 or 4 months, we will have the international acts coming in. Personally, I'm sort of baffled as to, you know, regarding the cricket and the grand final, the NRL and the AFL grand finals and all that chestnut, how they're going ahead and we're not. But it's all baffling to me at the moment, and we're just trying to do our best just to get, like I said, hit the ground running when we can, have the acts lined up. But, you know, I can't speak for Frontier, I can't speak for Australia, because the rules just change every day. I'm sorry, I don't have an answer for you.
No problem. Thank you very much. I think we need to kind of wrap it. David, do you have? Yeah.
Yeah. Look, is there any final comments from any of our panelists here today?
I'd like to speak to Vanessa regarding her kids. I just like, I'll talk from a personal point of view with my mum. Well, when I started in the industry, I was 22. I was asked to go on the road with hunters and collectors. She knew what I was doing and she didn't speak to me for 3 months. You know, I rang her twice and she screamed at me both times saying, "What the hell are you doing? You need to get a job." And I had left a job at a real estate agent to do this, and not knowing the security, you know, and of being of Indian origin, you know, she wanted me to have a secure job. But I did pursue my dream. And, you know, at times it's been really hard, but that's life. And I think that you should maybe just consider what they want. And, you know, then when I went on to work for Kylie, you know, and my mother said, "Oh, you know, do you think I could meet her?" You know, and then slowly she just became very proud of me. And that was very important for me, but it was really important that I followed my dream. And like I said, there was, you know, the money was decent, but it wasn't great, you know, not what I could have gone on and studied and done other things. But I did make sure that I had lots of fingers in different pies, but that was my personality. You know, I went on to work through those connections with Kylie, the lovely Sean Fitzpatrick, who's her tour manager, hooked me up with the Queen guys, you know, Queen and Adam Lambert. I ended up touring with Roger Taylor for 3 weeks as his PA. I'm Leo Sayer's PA when he's on the road. I mean, right now I'm 49, turning 50 in a few months. Life couldn't be better. And I feel like I've had a really fulfilled life. So that's what you need to weigh up against. Do you want, you know, security, superannuation, all that kind of stuff. And that can come with it if they're smart with their money. But I do think I'm glad I just led my own path. With all respect to my mum, it was the best decision I ever made to just continue on. And it was lonely at times. Went to London not knowing what I was doing the first time, you know, then made the connection with Kylie. So it is, it's just one of those things. If your heart's in it, continue. Don't be in something you don't want to do. That's my 2 cents.
Thank you so much, Suzi. I really appreciate you putting the effort in to tell me all of that. And we have been very supportive of them, but it has been hard because there's times where my husband and I are thinking, "Oh, guys, come on, you know, this is not going to work." But they're not giving up, so we have to be behind them. Thank you so much.
And on that note, I think we have to leave it there. So thank you much to all of our panelists, to Phil, Mark, Amara, Suzi, and Allegra, and thank you to Waldo as well. And we let's hope we can do this again. Thanks very much to everyone.
Yes, I'd just like to chip in and add to your thanks, David. Yeah, thanks everyone, the whole panel, for just invaluable information and insight. So useful and enlightening on many levels. Very much appreciated. Thanks a lot to Mitchell Hart for his technical support, and of course to Waldo and David for their lively moderating. And I'd just like to thank Waldo also once again for organising this session and the improvisation workshop from last week. They've just been of great benefit to us all and very enjoyable. So a big thank you to all of you.
It's a pleasure.